I'll be doing a walkthrough of the November 2021 Higher Paper 1. Let's make a start. So the first question is asking us to multiply two decimals together. So you can hop the decimals out. So in the first one, it will be hop them out twice and hop them out once. So that then leaves us with 367 times 42. And then when we get the answer, we can hop the decimals back in. So it's just a little bit easier to work with. So 2 times 7 is 14, 6 times 2 is 12, so that's 13 with the 1 there, and then 6, that's a 7 there, hop a 0 there. 4 times 7 is 28, that's 24 plus 2, which is 26, and then 12 plus 2, which is 14, and that leaves us with... So our answer then becomes, we're going to hop the decimals back in now, so we hopped out 3 times altogether, we're going to hop back in 3 times, that's 15.414. Now, it doesn't quite work the same way with division. You can't just hop the decimal out twice here and once here, because if I was to write this out just to show you that, essentially you'd write a division written like this. So whatever you do to the top, you have to do to the bottom. So if I times this by 100, I have to times this by 100 as well. So that then becomes 5984 over 160. Now we're going to divide this. Now, before you dive into using the bus stop method, they're both even numbers, so you can just half them. So if you just half the top and half the bottom, they're again still even numbers. You can half the top and bottom. It'll just make your life a bit easier when you use the bus stop method. They're still even, and we can half them again. That becomes 20, and they are still even. So that goes into, so that then boils down to 187 over 5. So that's the simplest you can get it. And then now you can use the bus stop method on it. So we have 5, 187. 3s are 15, it gives me a remainder of 3, that's 37, 5, 6, 7s are 35, remainder of 2, a point there, that's 37.4. Question 2, so we've got a Venn diagram and it's saying even numbers less than 19. Now the mark scheme's happy with you either including 0 or not, so we'll go 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, so that's all the even numbers. We know it's 19, but we know A uses 6, 12, and 18, so I can rub off 12, 6, and 18, and I know 14 is used by group B, so we are then left with 16, 10, 8, 4, 2, and 0. So if you look at A and B, if you look at what they have in common, we know that they've both got A and A, 6 and 6, and 18 and 18, so we know that 6 is going to go in there, 18 is also going to go in there. That leaves us with 12 in A, and 2 and 14 in B, and then actually I can rub this 2 off here as well, so that then leaves us with a 0, 4, 8, 10, and 16 outside. So question 3, so we're just subtracting 2 fractions and it wants us to give the answer in mixed numbers. So this becomes 21 over 5 minus 8 over 3. Now we're going to make the denominators the same, times the top and bottom by 3 here, times the top and bottom by 5 here, and that becomes 63 over 15 minus 40 over 15, and then that becomes 23 over 15, and it wants it as mixed numbers, so we just use a bus stop method here. So 1s are 15, that leaves us with the remainder 8, so that is going to become 1, 8 over 15. Is the final answer. Moving on to question 4. So we've got 2 houses. Tomorrow's house is 220,000, Raheem's house is 160,000 in 2017, and in 2019, tomorrow's house values decreased by 20%, Raheem's house had increased by 30%. Okay, whose house had greater value? Okay, so let's start with, so we have Tamara, and we want to work out 20% of 220,000, so we can then 220,000, work out 20% and subtract it. Okay, so straight away we can take these 2 zeros off, and that 0 cancels out there. That leaves us with essentially 20 times 2,200, and we can double that number and add a 0 on, so double that, that's 4, and add an extra 0 on from there. So that gives us 44,000, and now we're going to do 220,000 we're going to subtract this 20% to figure out what the value in 2019 is. And that becomes 176,000. Right, and then we have Raheem. We're going to do something similar with him. So that's 160,000. We're going to times that by 30%. In this case, it's increased. So we're going to add this on. And again, we can get rid of these two zeros there. And then we're going to times 3 by 16. And we're going to add that 0 on. So that gives us 48 with 3 zeros on there. And then we're going to add that value on to 160,000. I've added an extra 0 there. And that's 208,000. So you can see, comparing that value, just write that properly. That value and that value there, that you need to now write a statement because it says whose house had greater value. So you would write whose house had greater value in 2019, and you can even go as far as saying 208,000 and is greater than 76,000. Awesome. Moving on to question 5. So this is a slightly tricky question because of the way it looks. So we have Rosie, Matilda, and Ibrahim. So we have Rosie, Matilda, and Ibrahim. Just write that properly. 4 to 7 to 15. And now you're told that Ibrahim has 24 more stickers than Matilda, and it's asking you how many more stickers he has than Rosie. Now you can look at this question in parts. So what do I mean by parts? So we have Raheem, he has 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. We have Matilda, she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts. And then we have Ibrahim finally, who has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 parts. So we know that Ibrahim has 24 more stickers than Matilda. So Ibrahim, this bit here is the extra. So these 8 parts are equal to 24. How do we know that? Because of this line here. It's saying he has 24 more stickers than Matilda. So 8 parts is 24, which then means that 1 part represents 3. So Raheem then has 4 parts. So that's 4 times 3, which is 12. And then the question is asking how many more does Ibrahim have than Rosie? Sorry, I keep saying Raheem from the last question. I mean Rosie. So how many more does Ibrahim have than Rosie? Well, if Rosie's got 12, and Ibrahim's got a total of 15 times 3, which is 45, then the answer must be 45 minus 12, which is 33. So hopefully that made sense. Question 6. So we've been given a shape and we've been given its volume and we have been asked to work at the height of the prism. So just to remind you, the volume is cross-section times length. So if I just write that out, cross-section times length. Okay, so what is cross-section? So if I just get my highlighter, the cross-section is this bit here. That is the cross-section, and the length is that bit there. So the length, we know, is 25. We don't know what the cross-section is, but we do know that it's this shape over here. So I'm just going to write, for now, I'm just going to leave it as cross-section. And we know the volume is 750, so we can divide each side by 25. And that gives us 30 is equal to the cross-section. And like I said, the cross-section was, if I just grab my highlighter and draw it on there, the cross-section was this bit here. And we know that that bit there is a triangle, and the triangle has the formula of base times height divided by 2. We know what the base is, so that's 30 is equal to 5 times height divided by 2. We can now just rearrange this and solve for height. So if I times each side by 2, we have 60 is equal to 5h. Divide each side by 5, and you get h is equal to 12. Moving on to question 7. So we've been told that the surface area of the cube and the sphere are both equal, and then we need to show this. So essentially we should solve this bit here, which is the surface area of the cube is equal to the surface area of the sphere. So for the cube, we know it has 6 faces. So the surface area is going to be 6 times x squared, because each side is x, and the area is just going to be 1 square, which is x times x, which is x squared, and we're going to times that by 6. So hopefully that makes sense. So the 6 came from the set faces, and the x squared comes from the fact that one of these sides is x times x. And then we have the sphere here, and then the surface area we can get of this is from that formula there, which is 4 pi r squared. 3 squared is 9, 9 times 3 is 36 pi. So now if you make these both equal, we have 6x squared is equal to 36 pi. I can divide each side by 6. That gives me x squared is equal to 6 pi. You can see we want it in this form here, so that means x is equal to root 6 pi. Moving on to question 8. So it wants me to solve this. So I'm going to move everything over to the left and solve the quadratic. So 2 numbers that multiply to give us minus 24, that add or subtract to give us minus 5, so that'll be plus 3 minus 8. So we can just factorize that now, and that'll be a minus 8 there, and then that becomes x minus 8, x plus 3, and then our answer, it's asking us to solve it, would be x is equal to 8, or x is equal to minus 3. So question 9, anything raised to the power of 0 is just 1. So when you're multiplying, you just add indices together. This has a 1 there. So we have a 1 plus 6 plus minus 6. These two cancel out, so we're left with just 1. So essentially the answer is 3 to the power of 1, which is just 3. Whenever you have a negative, it's just the same as writing 1 over. So here we can write 1 over 2 to the power of 4. Now the negative's gone, so that leaves me with 1 over 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 1 over 16. And finally, the last one here is a cube root, so this becomes 27 cube root. What 3 numbers do I multiply together to give me 27? That's 3. Question 10, we've got a shape here. They're all squares, so we can just say, it's each side is x and x. We know the total area is 5406. And it wants us to estimate the length of one side. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares all together. So the area is going to be 6 times x squared. So x squared is the area of 1, and we've got 6 all together. So we know the area is equal to 5406, so we can round that to 5400, because we know in the 6 times table we have 54, so we'll make life easier. Divide each side by 6, that's going to give me 900 is equal to x squared. That's going to be root 900 is equal to x. And then we have that then can be written as root 100, root 9, and that can be 10 times 3, which is x, and that is 30 centimeters. Is it an underestimate or an overestimate? So it's an underestimate because you added the area down. So underestimate total area rounded down. Question 11. So we have got 2 rectangles. The area of rectangle A is equal to the area of rectangle B. Write an expression. Y. Okay, cool. So we want to work out the area of each one, and make them equal to each other. So we have A, which is going to be, so area is base times height, so 6 times 2w plus y, which is 12. When you expand it, 12w plus 6y. And then we have B, which is area is equal to 7w times 3y plus 6, and that's 21wy plus 42w. And now we want to make them both equal to each other, so we have 12w is equal, 12w plus 6y is equal to 21wy plus 42w. And then we have, now we want to get y on its own because they want the equation for y in terms of w. So well, the first simplification I can see is I want to get y's on its own. So this is a y, and that's a y. So I'm going to move this over to that side, and that's going to give me 66y minus 21wy. And I'm going to move this over to that side, and that's going to become 42w minus 12w. And I can just subtract those two, so that's just going to be 30w. And this here, I can factor out y, so that's 6 minus 21w. And then the equation becomes 30w over 6 minus 21w. So moving on, question 21, they've already given us the cumulative frequency, so you don't need to actually work anything out, we just need to plot this. Remember to plot this against the ends, not the midpoint. So the first one is 5 and 4, the next one is 10 and 11, the next one is 15 and 24, the next one is 20 and 34, and then 38 for 25, and then 40 for the last one. Join them together using a nice smooth line. Let me just do that again. And you can connect it to 0. And the next question says find an estimate for the median. So for the median, we can use the formula n plus 1 divided by 2. So that's going to be 40 plus 1. So 41 divided by 2 is 20.5. So if you look over at 20.5, draw a line across. And then if I draw a line right down through there, so that is 11, 12, 13. So 13 is what I get. The mark scheme accepts anything between 13 and 14. So Ted is trying to change a recurring decimal into a fraction. So here's the start of his method. He's got x, 10x. Right, you want to cancel out the decimal part. So in this case, the recurring bit is that. So what he's done is he's worked out, oh no, sorry, it's 43. And these don't quite match up yet. In order for these to match up, so he's got x and he's got 10x, then he needs to work out 100x, because now the decimals line up and they can cancel each other out. So evaluate his method so far. So again, leaving this here is great, but also just write a statement that if he works out 100x instead of 10, or not even instead, if he works out 100x, he can cancel the decimals out. Question 14, so I need to show that the area of the shape is that. So it's a compound shape, so I can split the shape into 2. So here's the top bit. I know for this bit, the area is going to be that times that. And then for this down here, I know what the base is, but this height here, I don't know what that is. I know this full height. I want to know what this height here is. So that height there is going to be 11 plus x plus 11 minus 4, which is going to be x plus 7. So there, now we've got that. So essentially I'll label this C and D. So shape C will have an area of 4 bracket x plus 1. So it's going to be 4x plus 4. And then the area of D is going to be the base times height. So area is 2x plus 6. And then x plus 7, and that becomes 2x squared plus 14x plus 6x plus 42, and then we can simplify that to 2x squared plus 14 plus 6 gives us 20x plus 42 there. And then the total, when I add all that together, so that is going to be 2x squared plus 20 x plus 42 plus 4x plus 4. I can collect the like term, so collect that and that. And that's 2x squared plus 24x plus 46. If I click that and that, I check that with that, and they're both match, so that is good. 18. So they want us to write it in that form there. So essentially with fractions, you want to get rid of the, well, not get rid, but you want to make the denominators the same. So essentially we have 4x plus 3 over 2x plus 3 over 5. So I'm going to times the top and bottom by 5 here. And I'm going to times the top and bottom by 2x here. And that gives me 5 bracket 4x plus 3 all over 10x plus 3 times 2 is 6, so we have the x, and then at the bottom 10x here. Now the denominators are both the same, so essentially I can expand the tops out, so that'll be 20x plus 15 plus 6x, and since the denominators are the same, I can just write it like this, and that then becomes 26x plus 15 over 10x. Question 16. So there's 3 red counters and 5 yellow counters in a bag. Jude takes 3 counters at random. Work out the probability that he takes exactly 1. So if I was to draw this as a tree diagram, so there's red and there's yellow. So he could have either taken a red the first time, and then the second time he would have had to take a yellow, and then the third time he would have had to take a yellow. Or he could have taken a yellow, and then a yellow, and then a red, or he could have taken a yellow and then a red and then a yellow. So there's 3 possible paths he could have followed. So A, he could have done that. B, he could have done, I'll use a different color, that. Or C, he could have done that. There's only 3 ways he could have done it, and essentially that looks like red, yellow, 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 red, yellow, or yellow, yellow, red. So all 3 of these would have gone something like, so for example, the probability of a red is 3 out of 8. The probability of a yellow is 5 out of 8. And then once he's taken that, the probability of a yellow is going to be out of 7 here. So it's going to be 5 out of 7. And then here it's going to be 4 out of 6 because he's already taken a yellow. And when you write all of these out, you'll find that they all become the same. So in this case, that's 4 over 7, and that's going to be 3 over 6, and that's going to be 3 over 7, and that's going to be 4 over 6. So you can see that all of these multiply to be the exact same thing. If you look at the numerators, it's 3 times 5 times 4, or it's 5 times 3 times 4, or it's 5 times 4 times 3. It doesn't matter what order you do it in. Essentially, if you work out one of these, any one, you just need to times it by 3. So if you go with, let's say we go with this one, we have 3 over 8 times 5 over 7 times 4 over 6. Once I've worked this out, I've just got to multiply it by 3. So if I do 3 times 5 times 4, so 5 times 4 is 20, 20 times 3, and then times that by 3, so that's going to become 60, all over 8 times 7 times 6, which is 336. We don't need to simplify it, and then we're left with 3 times that, so that's 180 over 336. It's the same as, I could have calculated each one of these and then added them together. It would be the exact same answer. Question 17, so on the grid below, shade the region satisfying all 3 inequalities. Let's start with an easy one. X is less than 3. If you find where X is, it's right there. That's X is 3. So they want X is less than 3, so I'll draw an arrow, it'll be this way. And then we have, actually I'm not going to draw this arrow, I'm going to leave the arrow off for now. And then we have, let's have a look at this one here. So it's written in the form y is equal to mx plus c. That's where it's going to cross the y-axis. So the intercept is going to cross here. And we know for every 1 we go across, it's going to go 3 down, because it's got a negative gradient. 1 across 3 down, 1 across 3 down. So it looks something like this. And then finally we have this one. Now it's not written in the form y is equal to mx plus c, so in order to do that we'll have to move the 4 over. And now we'll have to divide each side by 2, so it's x over 2 minus 2. Okay, now to plot this line, it has a y-intercept at minus 2, so that's going to be there. And then we're going to use the gradient. So for every 1 you go across, we go a half up because it's positive. So 1 across, half up, 1 across, So if I connect them together, right, now we have that. So if I get my red pen now, essentially it's going to be any region that is, in this case, I should probably write this down here. So when y is greater than, it's essentially anything above the line. When y is less than, it's anything below the line. And in our cases, both y's are less than. So for this line, it's going to be anything in this side here. And then for this line, it's going to be anything below this side here. And then for this line x, it's going to be anything on this side. So what falls within all three? If I just grab my highlighter, that would be this region. In here. Now notice if I just get my pen, I have not highlighted this bit here because this bit does not cover x is less than 3. X is less than 3 is just this side, it doesn't fall in this. And the reason I haven't covered this bit here is because it doesn't satisfy this line here. This line is less than this, so it doesn't fall within that. So you just want to be careful with that. And the question also said label. It said label the region, and it said shade it as well, so we'll label it R. So question 18, we have a trapezium. The area of the trapezium is given as 66. The length of AD, B, and CD is given as ratio, so that's going to be 2x. That's 3x. We've got the area as well. It's asking us to find the length AB. Okay, so again, let's just start with some basics. What do we know? It's a trapezium. We know the area. Let's write down the formula for the area of a trapezium. So the area is a half. It's normally A plus B times the height. So we know area is 66. A half, we know AB in this case is 2x. BC is 3x. We don't know the height. So you have 66 is equal to 2.5x height. So now we need to essentially find x in order to solve this question because it's asking for AB. Now, can we find the height? So the height in this is that there. Now notice they've given us angle in here, so that's a little hint that we probably need to use the angle at some point. And that right there is a triangle, right angle triangle. And so we can use Pythagoras to solve out, find the height here. So this is going to be the opposite angle. This is going to be the hypotenuse. This is going to be the adjacent. Now we don't know anything about the adjacent. We can cancel that out. We want to find the opposite, and we know something about the hypotenuse, so that leaves us with sine. So we now have sine 30 is equal to the opposite, which here is the height, over the hypotenuse, which is 6. So we have 6 times 30, which is 3, is equal to the height. Because sine 30 is a half, so you will need to know that for this. It's a non-calculated paper. So if I now come here, I have 66 is equal to 2.5x times 3. So that is 66 is equal to 7.5x. And then we have 66 over 7.5 is equal to x. And we now need to solve that. So I can times the top and bottom by 10 to get rid of the decimal. So that's 660 over 750, not 750, sorry, 75 is equal to x. And then that simplifies to x is equal to 8.8. And the question is not asking for x, it's asking for AB. AB is 2x, so in this case it's going to be 2 times 8.8, which is 17.6. And if you're wondering where the 8.8 came from, you can just use the bus stop method, which would have 75 here, 660 here. But like I mentioned earlier, you can simplify this down as well. They're both divisible by the 5 times table. So you can simplify that down and then use the bus stop method to make your life a bit easier. So question 19 is saying, show that that can be written in that form there. So straight away looking at this, before even doing any work, I can see that can be written as root 4, root 3, which can then become 2, root 3. Again, it'll just make my life easier at some point. So let's start with that. 8 plus 2 root 3 over 5 plus root 3. And we're going to rationalize, so that's going to be 5 minus root 3 over 5 minus root 3. And we can expand that out, so that becomes 40 minus 8 root 3 plus 10 root 3 minus 2 root 3 root 3 all over 25 minus 5 root 3 plus 5 root 3 minus root 3 root 3. So these two cancel out. This here becomes 3. So in the denominator, we are now left with 22. At the top, this becomes a 3. So that's 3 times 2, which is 6. So that's going to leave us with 40 plus 2 root 3 minus 6. And then that becomes 34 plus 2 root 3 over 22. Now, here you want to be a bit careful, because if you look at that form, there's nothing in front of that there. Because there's nothing there, we want to see if you can simplify this, which you can. We can divide everything by 2, and that becomes 17 plus root 3 over 22. So one to watch out for there. You won't get the final mark. Otherwise, so here we've been given the equation of a circle, x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. And it's asking us to use the graph to solve the simultaneous equation. So simultaneous equations where two lines essentially cross each other. So we're going to write this in the form y is equal to mx plus c. So we're going to move over the 2x. So we can see it's got a y-intercept at plus 1. So if I go on here, it's got a y-intercept right there. So for every one I go across, I go 2 up, 1 across, 2 up, and then 1 across, 2 up. And I can do the same going backwards, 1 across, 2 down, 1 across, 2 down. And I'm using the gradient to do that. 1 across, 2 down. And there you go, I've plotted my line. I'm going to connect the points together using a ruler, of course. And those are our points. So the points that I'm interested in are where it crosses the circle. So that is going to be them 2 points. And now with this question, you want to be as accurate as you can. So the first one that I can see up there, the coordinates I can read off there are 2.1 and 5.2 for y. And then for this bottom one down here, I can read x as minus 2.9 and minus 2.9. And then for y, it is reading off as minus 4.7 for me. So that's that. Moving on to the next one, work out g of f of 1. So let's start with this bit here. So that's just f of 1. So that's saying in this equation, substitute 1 in. So if I go with f of 1, instead of x, it becomes 3 bracket 1 squared plus 1. And that becomes 3 plus 1, which is 4. Now I've done that bit, I need to look at this bit. So all I need to do is sub 4 into this now. So I have g of 4 is equal to 4 over 4 squared, which is 4 over 16, which is 1 over 4. Now for the next one, you want to work out the inverse of f of g. So firstly, I want to sub g into f. So I need to sub essentially this into there. So that is going to be, if I write f of x out at the minute, we have 3x squared plus 1. Now I'm going to substitute g of x into there. So that's going to be 3. Notice the brackets, it's still squared. Now x is going to become g of x, which is 4 over x squared plus 1. So now this is f of g. And they want the inverse of this. So firstly, what I'll do is I'll simplify it a little bit. So we have 4 squared, which is 16. And we're going to do 16 times 3, which is 48. So that's going to be 48 at the top. And at the bottom, it's going to be x to the power of 4, because it's x squared. And then there's a squared again outside. Plus 1 is still equal to f of g. And now to find the inverse, we're essentially going to write this as y is equal to 48 plus 1 with x4. And we're going to swap the x and the y around. So that's going to be x is equal to 48 over y4 plus 1. And now we just want to rearrange this for y. So that's going to be x minus 1 is equal to 48 over y4. I can flip these both sides to get y at the top, because I want to solve this for y. So this will become 1 over x minus 1 is equal to y4 over 48. So this is a nice little trick that some people don't know about. So all I've done is I've flipped both sides of the equation, because this is the same as writing over 1. Now I'll flip them both. I can move the 48 over. And now I've got it written as y. So essentially we can now say that y is equal to this to the power of the 4th root of 48 over x minus 1. And that is your answer, so that is h. So now you can just write h is equal to moving on to 22. So here we have got a question of completing the square. So we have y is equal to 9. But I'm going to write this as a quadratic, so x squared. I'm just going to rearrange this a little bit. So all I've done is move 3 at the start. Here you want to be very, very careful. So first you're going to factor out the 3, but you've taken out a negative. So this now becomes a negative. This is really easy to go wrong here. So notice how the signs have now changed because I've taken out a negative 3. So in terms of completing the square, this becomes a half. If I square that, I've got to factor these two. So that is going to be 6, and that is going to be 3. And that's going to become half of that, which is 3. 3 squared is minus 9. Minus that. And then that then becomes x minus 3 all squared minus 12. And now I can expand this out, so that can go in there. And that's going to become plus 3 times 12 is 36. And now how do I make this equation equal to 0? Essentially is the question. So imagine you just have that. Now to make that 0, that must be 3. And then that will leave me with that as 36. So just be very careful with the negatives on that one. And that is the final question. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please consider subscribing. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one.